Hey guys, it's Andrew here from To Miniatures. This is our third video in our series sculpting a 28mm figure. So in this video we're going to cover things like belts, belt buckles and straps, as well as the footwear, so the shoes and the leg wraps. So we're going to talk about things like insert meshes, especially when we come to the belts, but we'll do that later. So first things first, we're going to start with the lower legs, and we're going to make the shoe and then the leg wraps. I had said boots in a previous video, but I realized that's actually not that accurate. It's more accurate to have the pants go all the way down, but then tied around to the ankle. But we're going to do something a little bit simpler, which is just the leg wraps. So let's go ahead and turn off our gamma. We don't need that. Let's get rid of the base for now as well. Okay, and we'll get rid of one of the legs, and we'll just work on the right leg. So what we're going to make is these things here. So this seems to be like where the pants have gone down the whole way, but to keep the heat in, they seem to have wrapped the lower leg. So there's two images I found that show this off and what we're going to make. So this one here is good. So we can see that like it starts at the top and wraps its way back down. And I think this image here shows us going into the shoe. So we're going to show that as well as this little strap across here that ties it together at the top. So we're going to make that as well. So we're going to start with this leg wrap and then the shoe. So the way we're going to do this is where they've got these layers here, we're going to sculpt those rather than create them separately. But this bit at the top is going to be a cylinder, and then a thinner cylinder here, and we're going to make a little knot. So back into ZBrush. So we've got our lower leg that we made earlier and a very, very basic foot. So like I did with the sleeves in the last video, because the material that would be going on top of this leg is going to be so thin, it's not, and I already have these legs saved, I may as well just edit this leg here to make what I want. Now, normally I would go ahead and remove the thigh up here, because I'm not going to use it when I pose the figure properly. I might just use these pants here as the upper leg, but I'll leave it for now just in case we want to keep the leg wraps and put a different thigh on top later, just so that I've got that saved as a separate tool. So let's go ahead and insert a cylinder. So this is going to make that band at the top. And let's place that in. So let's put that about there. Make that a bit bigger. Cool. Obviously our calves are not a cylinder, so we'll change that in a second. But I want to get rid of this second one to get it out of the way. So auto groups. Sorry, let me just go draw and isolate this one, and then I'll get rid of all of this at the top as well. So let's get rid of the base mesh except for the leg, and then we'll get rid of the clothes except for that leg. Let's hide those. Let's hide the head and the torso. We just want to work with this lower leg here. So let's look at this geometry for a second. So this geometry here, obviously because we've squashed, is going to be fine for now, and all the polygons are going to run in the same direction. So we're going to keep this rather than dynamesh it for now. So let's just divide it a couple of times. Go back here. So if we go back to the reference image, there's not really that many creases going across, but we want to add some to make it look more interesting. So the one I had up earlier looks like it started at the top and wrapped down to the feet. This one looks like it wraps up, and that's why it's tied. So I don't think we're going to worry about that. This little bit of fabric in here. I think we're just going to do this band on the outside, and then we're going to start it wrapping down as if it was wrapped from the bottom up, but we're not going to worry about this bit there. That's going to be too small to show up. Okay, so let's start adding some folds in here. So we know that the shin bone is kind of like a triangle with a point at the front. So let's push this kind of in at the sides, and it's going to be more flat across the back, especially wider here where the calf muscle is. And let's drop that in a bit there. Cool. Alright, make that a bit narrower. Okay, let's drop the calf. Alright, and now we just want some basic sort of folds. So I like this alpha brush in here for doing folds. So I think it's going to start that way. I'm going to turn this intensity right down. I prefer to do things in lots of smaller strokes than one big stroke, especially working with a mouse and not a tablet. If you have a tablet, you can obviously do things like the pressure sensitivity, but I haven't got that yet, and most people won't either. And then let's add some lines back. So this kind of thing is going to show up when we put a wash over the figure. It's going to settle into those sort of crevices. That's how they're going to get painted, most likely. So once we've made the rest of this, we're going to take these pants and just kind of fit them more kind of over the leg wraps, because the leg wraps are wrapping around the pants, pulling them tighter around the shin. But we'll get to that in a bit. So now we want to work with this lower ankle here, but at the moment I don't think I want to destroy this calf and shin here. So let's just mask what we want out of this, like we did with the pants. Down here, extract, accept, shift click the outside, split hidden, delete, and then Dynamesh. Cool. So this is going to make up the leg wraps going into the shoe. I'm going to keep this around for a little bit longer, but I'll start to hide it in a second. We might need to get rid of it and certainly make these calves thinner as we start to add folds in here. So this is going to go right down to the bottom of the foot, so I'm just going to keep going the whole way down. Once we start to do the shoe later on, then we'll tuck it in and work out how that works. So let's just make the shape again of where the calf muscles are. So make that a bit wider at the side. It's kind of a little bit thinner in there already, just kind of where the ankle bone is. Alright, now let's turn this up all the way. So subtool on, yeah, with the dam standard. So let's just start wrapping and pretending it's going to wrap its way around. So if we start here, let's go this way. And then, so this is just a very sort of basic sort of way that it's wrapping. And then we're going to make one layer sit on top of the other one, but not just yet, not till we've decided where these lines are going to be. So we're going to have to get rid of some of the material from the shin to make these folds work, but yeah, okay, so that's alright. Now let's go in with the add tool and start adding just on this top one, and then we're going to flatten this off to look like it's overlapping. Around a bit further. Cool. That one's a little bit thick, I think, so I'm going to push that in further. Or actually, rather than doing that, might start it further around here. There we go, like that. So it's a bit more gradual at the start. Okay, so this is the basic sort of shape of where our lines with this leg wrap are going to go. Let's just undermesh that one more time and go in and flatten some of this, especially towards the top. Just so that there's a bit more of a step between the layers. So we spoke about last week, so not last week, sorry, the last video about how thick some of these details need to be on top of each other to actually show when we're painting. And I said it's like about the size of the eye or the size of the nose from the face we've just made. So it's going to be a little bit wider than this. It's kind of something you learn to judge as you sculpt, but once you've got more of a figure, you match the details to the rest of the figure, like proportionally, and so it gets easier. And the more you like models you have, and the more assets you've got, then, and as you reuse them, you're going to be just adding to scenes rather than starting from scratch, and you already have stuff there that's made, and so the things like the line weight will be a little bit clearer. So So it starts at the top, wraps its way around. Yeah. Cool. Alright, let's do this a bit with the foot. Alright, so now these lines are in, like normal, I want to see remesh this now to make the polygons follow these lines, just so it's smoother. But before we do that, I'm just going to go in and take away a bit more at the top. Especially up here, I haven't done this one yet. Yeah, let's get rid of that. And then tuck that in. Okay, cool. So this is, that one's a little bit more extreme than the others, so let's pull it in. And well, anyway, we're going to smooth those out in a second. So let's just do a quick seam remesh. And then we'll come in and neaten those lines up, make them all the same size, and then start adding some more folds. Then we'll add this rope across the front, the string that holds it together. Okay, cool, there we go. So now when we Z-remesh, sorry, we've done the Z-remesh. Now when we smooth, it knows where all the polygons are. And it's going to smooth these out and make these lines look a lot neater. But I just need to add a bit, make that go a bit further in. So let's just do a quick couple of taps to smooth it. What happens if we turn contrast up? There we go. Turn up a bit of contrast. It's going to make that look a bit better. Sorry, I don't know why it's giving us that. We want the move tool. Okay, now that we start shaping it a bit more. Right. Let's go in up here. Get rid of some of that. Add a bit more. Get rid of some of this. Cool. So this over here is a bit much, but that's alright. Okay, so that's the basic sort of wrap around the leg, and that's going to be pretty easy to paint, but it looks a bit bland. Oh, actually, we need to make this a bit flatter here, and then this calf doesn't come out quite so far enough yet, so we're going to do that. But otherwise, that's kind of okay. Actually, a little bit wider. Cool. Now we just want to add some details like folds. So let's turn the resolution all the way up and do what we did before. And we're just going to wrap around, adding just some lines like this. Once we add these shoes in, then we'll, and when we tuck it in, we might change some of these lines. This is just so that it looks a little bit less bland. You can also use this standard brush to sharpen some of the lines by pushing away or to squash some of these lines. We don't want to do that too much because when we come to supporting the model, they're going to be quite thin. And with, especially things like the legs, where the detail is not as important, it's not, having the crystallines here are nice, but we're going to paint them as one color. They're going to be quite smooth, so it's not the biggest thing to worry about, and it's just more of a hassle to support. So with just not much to gain, so still going to smooth that out. We need to wrap that in and get that coming out. So one of the things I mentioned in the last video is that the amount that things are raised, that layers are raised off the layer before, need to be consistent. It doesn't look right if all of a sudden these are raised the same amount off the layer before and then this one is like that. It doesn't look right because the fabric is all one piece and we know that in our heads. So we need to be able to like we need to look at it and it needs to read as one piece, and so the step between these layers needs to be the same. So I'm just going to go around and pull up the layer behind it, push down the layer on top a little bit and blend the two together. Otherwise that's kind of okay for now. I'll go back, delete higher, zero mesh to get the same, just so that the polygons might run along some of these creases a bit better. Smooth it and then turn up the contrast again. Once we've done that, we're going to start doing this rope up here. That's going to be a lot more just sculpting. So there we go, that looks better. And let's join the two down now. So they're one piece, but we're not going to dynamesh them together yet, just in case. Alright, so now we want this rope that's going to go across and that ties it together, because we know that the material sits kind of like this with one layer on top of the other. And, oh well, I've drawn it, let's keep it. Divide. Lower. There we go. So, I don't know how well this is going to show up, but there you go. So this is how it sits. It's been wrapped from the bottom up. Now, if we want to insert bits of string, the string is going to get wrapped around twice. So we're going to put in two more of these sort of squash cylinders, same way we did before. Let's put that across. That's a bit bigger, a bit like that. And squash it. Okay. Now, this geometry is probably quite squash. I just want to rematch that because I don't need it quite dense. So smoothing it obviously is shrinking it, but we'll just scale that right back up. So this is a little bit big, but first we just want to duplicate it to get a second one. Then we're going to have a knot and a little bow. Now, it's not going to be a perfect knot that you see on a proper shoelace or anything like that. And it's not meant to look like one either. It's meant to read as a knot when you look at it, but it's not the thing you're going to be paying attention to on this model. And it's, if we were to try and make the knots fold in the correct way, it'd be too small and we wouldn't see those lines. So the bow is what's going to make this stand out. So at the back, I've got to have one clearly under the other. But when it comes to the front, they're both just going to join together, and we're going to have a little ball and then two loops. So that's all right for now. And now that we've kind of got where this is going to sit, let's go around and add a bit of material kind of in the middle so that it's sort of a flat surface when we're painting it. This is again what we're talking about with how far out should these details go. It needs to be the same, but also we want to be able to paint inside there. So let's get that up a bit higher and a bit lower, just so that there's something in there, because these are probably going to be two shades of cream. So we kind of want to be able to paint this all as one shade of cream and then a thinner white line to go across the ribbon. But you still want to be able to see this and it's not too blurred. And that's probably about the same sort of line weight we're talking about with the same sort of step. It's a little bit thinner than some of the lines we've got here, but obviously if this was a real piece of string, that would be something like that. But okay, so now let's put in this little ribbon. So we're just going to insert a sphere. That's going to make the knot. Put that in front. Cool. And before I shape that, I'm just going to duplicate that once and put that down there. So for this sort of ribbon, I normally just make it into sort of a box. So we have ribbons on things like cloaks and stuff like that. And it needs to come all the way back in, up, down, and let's back into there. There we go. Cool. Right, excuse the car going past. Alright. And then let's tuck it in and tuck it in. Cool. And now we want sort of a ribbon. So the way we're going to do that is make this a bit bigger. Move, hold Alt, push that in just to get a bit of a loop. Pull that up There we go, kind of got the shape of a loop. Obviously it's quite deep, don't worry about that. I'm just going to mask off this bit at the front and then squash it and lift it out. Just so that's flat on the top, pull it to the side, there we go. So now I've kind of got a flat loop that's the same sort of line width as we've got up here. It's a little bit smaller, but I'm going to fix that in a second. Not by inflate, but I'm just going to make it bigger. So I'm going to put the gizmo at the top, that way when we pose it, we can spin it around. I'm going to zero image that as well. And I'll make that a bit flatter. Cool. And now we're going to put one here, duplicate the other one. Spin it around, drop it in, turn it back. Alright, so most of this is going to be with the move tool. So if I use this one, the standard move tool, it's the sort of the curve it makes isn't that organic, but if I use this one, it gives it more of a sort of a curve. So I normally use this one to start moving things around, the Acu curve. Because it does pull from a point, I've got to go in and like pull from a couple of different points. But and then I'll come back to this one to pull it back out if need be. So let's tuck that in. Let's tuck that in, make the ribbons come from more of the side. Alright, so we've got to fill that hole in there. Cool. So normally when we print a model, it's laying back at around 45 degrees. So we don't want to be supporting this in here. That's something quite small. So I'm going to use the back face mask and just pull this down like that. So when we come to print this, we're going to have to put a couple of small supports here, here, and here, and also on this rope. But we just don't want any overhangs on the front of the leg where we're not going to be able to reach. And when looking at a model top down, you're not going to see any of that either. So that's not too much of a worry. Anyway, so that's a quick band. Let's actually just add 2 bits of string that coming off the side, at least from the lace, just for the sake of it. So smaller again, but about the same size as the rope. Remesh it, duplicate, spin the second one. Going to do the same thing as before, where I'm going to use the back face mask to pull it to the mesh. Oh, hang on, pull that across. So I'm going to pull it to where I want it to sit. Just in there is probably fine. To the side. Alright, cool. This detail's a lot bigger than what it would be in real life, of course, but it's for a miniature and we want to be able to see it and paint it. So same thing again, pulling it down at not quite a 45-degree angle, but an angle that when we sit the model at an angle that we're going to support it, it's going to support itself. So there we go. So all of these sort of details make up this leg wrap. So that looks a lot better than just a basic calf. So let's put all those together now. So we've got this piece. Let's merge down, 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 down. Cool. So that's all now one mesh. I can duplicate that and mirror, but I'm actually going to mirror and weld instead. Just because we still want to edit those when we get to the boot. Let's turn the second one back on and then mirror and weld that because we've changed it. Let's go in quickly now and pull this closer to the leg wrapping. There we go. I haven't done that with symmetry. So there we go. Let's get rid of that. Don't need to see that. Ooh. So there we go. That looks a lot better. So we've got some nice sort of lines in there. Okay, let's do the shoe. Again, the shoe, we're just going to make that straight out of what we've got here. Actually, no, let's mask and extract that. Right, now let's look at the image I have up here earlier. I liked the one that was here. We can see some stitching lines around the ankle. We won't be able to see that stitch, but we're going to make the little crevices or indents where they go. But otherwise, there's not much detail in this shoe. There's not much of a sole either, but we'll do a bit of a sole just because. So we need that. Where does it come? It's kind of flat. So kind of flat like this. Wider. We want the bottom to be flat. So move the gizmo. Sorry about that bike in the background. Move the gizmo to there. Let's start flattening that shoe, but let's also move it down so it's got some depth. Same thing again. Shift click the outside, split hidden, delete, and Dino Mesh. We're going to go to a higher resolution. Cool. So let's go across the middle. Unmask this little bit here, gizmo at the center, and just inflate a small amount. Dino Mesh. There we go. That's the sole, just a basic sole of our shoe. Then we're going to lift it up in the middle to make the different bits of a foot, so the arch and stuff like that, as well as the heel. That's just going to get us started. Then we'll come in a second and sharpen that. But yeah, I don't like going to shoes. I need that a bit wider. Have a look at this one again. Alright, so these kind of leather shoes have loads of wrinkles in them. So we're going to do that. That's going to help us help this make the shoe look just a little bit more natural, and it's going to fit with the nice sort of creases and we've got in there as well. So just put a little bit around the ankle bone. Computer's struggling a little bit. I run this on just a cheap laptop and it runs fine, but with the recording software it makes a bit of noise. There we go. So that's sort of the basic sort of shoe. So that one had lace that went around the side. So let's do some little dents and raised areas. We're going to sharpen those up with the move brush in a second. And we're not going to worry about the lace on the shoe. We might do a little bit on the front, see how we go at the end. Then just with the move brush, just pull the top of that out and tuck the bottom of that in, so that's a bit neater. Move that up, move that forward. There we go. It's kind of that's a very basic sort of shoe. Let's get that leg wrap going a bit further down. Tuck it in, pull it on the side. Okay, so the sole of that shoe is not that nice. So let's smooth that back out. Because there really isn't much of a sole on these sort of shoes. So I might leave that there for now. That's going to be fine for what we're doing. And we don't need a lace for that. So let's go now mirror and weld. So we're going to leave all of these as separate parts just because as we're sculpting the rest of the model, we're going to be coming back to these and tinkering them and going, oh, I actually just want to fix that shape. When we get to posing it, we're going to split it up and join other bits together. But there we go, that's made our legs look a whole lot nicer, having an actual sort of shoe and something around the bottom of the legs. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the belts. So where we've kind of got the gap between these two bits of canvasing is where we're going to put a belt. So that's so some belts in some models are the thing that wraps around the outside, but it's hollow in the middle. And some of them are as simple as a cylinder, squashed and shrunken, is the belt. This is what we're going to do at the start, because the worst thing is having a belt that's got a bit of thickness, and then when you're posing the model, that there's a bit of a gap, and then you'd have to go and fill that gap later. So like we did with the sleeves, everything, we just want it to be solid. We don't want things to be like to have the gaps behind them. We will do something like that when we come to the strap on the shield. So hang on, let's move this back up, turn on symmetry, and let's start wrapping this belt to the waist of this figure. So we're going to start with symmetry turned on. So the belt's going to drop a little bit in the middle, come up at the sides. Cool. When we do the chainmail, we're going to squash a bit of this canvassing, but the belt will kind of determine the waistline of this model. So I already know that this head needs to get scaled up a tiny fraction, because it's a bit short. There we go. Now that looks a bit better. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to pose this model we've got here once you give him a weapon, and you'll have a miniature. But we do want to add the chainmail, so we're going to keep going. But so yeah, the belt's going to determine the shape of the model. So if we look at the belt by itself, just for when you're making it, it's kind of a little bit flat at the side, a little bit flat at the front, and so it's not quite a rectangle, it's more of an oval, but it's not as simple as getting a cylinder and squashing it, because you do need to be a bit longer at the sides and not so pointy. I would drop it, because we've got our hip bones that the belt sits on, I would drop it a little bit at the back, a little bit more at the front, because we're going to come in with a brush not too dissimilar from this one in a second, and put on, we'll go ahead and scale these. We're going to make those brushes before we do that though. So, and that obviously the more things you've got hanging off the belt, the more it's going to sit down at one side. But we know this model's going to have a scabbard, and that scabbard is going to sit on this right hand side. So I'm going to pull it down a little bit further on the right hand side, because that's where it's hanging. There we go. So that's going to be the start of the belt. Obviously we can see these lines, so let's go in there, see remesh that. Smooth it once. Perfect. So to give that a little bit more sort of definition, we can go in and turn the contrast up in a second. Let's first go around and just take away some material from the inside, just so the edges pop more. There we go. I needed to pull it a bit there to get around that. Cool, smooth once. Now I'll turn up the contrast. There we go. So that's an alright belt. So the scabbard is going to sit off that. So if we look up here, Anglo-Saxon belts, I had just been looking at a few. They kind of got, some of them have got these fancy belt buckles, but most medieval belts kind of look like this. So the brush that I had made before was an insert mesh brush, but on a curve. We're not going to worry about the curve just yet. We're going to start with just this basic sort of shape and the buckle, and we might do some little like studs and details like this, and we're going to make, so something quite like this. So let's go back to ZBrush. I'm going to have that in my second monitor, and of course you can have that on your phone screen. So I do these when I make these from scratch with cubes. When I want to make an insert mesh brush out of them, you've got to do something slightly different. So I make the belt, the width, so it's about the width of the belt. It's a bit bigger because we're going to smooth it down, and it's going to get a bit smaller. So I'm just going to duplicate that, keep a spare. So put this at the top. So this is going to be the strap hanging down, and it's going to go over the top. We'll give it a point or something at the bottom later on, and let's bring that in here. Let's actually move that forward, pull that back. There we go. So now the way these belts sort of work is they come around this side, so this piece comes around up over the top and down through here. So this one needs to come up here. So if we look at this geometry, because we've got these squares here, that's not really going to help. So we need to smooth this down. with a flattened brush, just start flattening this at the top. Take a delete lower and series mesh. And then we'll be able to, like the polygons will start to run over the top a bit better. Cool. So that's already kind of in there. So we need to bring this back to the gambeson. And let's also rotate it as well, a bit like that, so that it's coming off the surface area of this equal on both sides. Obviously when we pose our model, we're going to need this running in a different direction, but this is where it's going to start, and lots of models are standing upright anyway. So there's our first piece. Let's get out of polyframe. Let's duplicate another one of these, put this across here. So this one needs to run from, oh sorry, I made a mistake earlier. The belt runs this way around and then behind it and up. So this one needs to go, let's actually come down here to initialize. So this initialize here is if you want to, when you make an object, so you bring in your cube, if you want a different amounts of polygons. So if we go G cube with 222, it's going to show us this as cube with a 2x2x2. I want to leave that. Yep, that's good. Sometimes I like to have the 1x1x1 so that I can pull corners, because when I pull a corner, sometimes I want the whole thing to move with it. But for now, I think we're going to be okay with this 2x2. Let's stretch it out. Smaller, bring it forward, squash this a bit, and then put it this way. So the reason I went down to that is because I'm going to pull this one back, and this one back, as well as this one. So this is a bit of poly modeling to make this shape. Something we'll talk about more when we make helmets. So I only need to, this is really great when we come to dynamic subdivision, but obviously if we subdivide this, it's going to round them off into more of a tube. So we don't want that just yet. So I want to bring that in and that there, and also pull this a bit further forward. There we go. So if I go series mesh now, that's too much. I just go double. No. Alright, zero. No, sorry. Hang on. Series mesh. Oh, screw it. We're just going to go Dynamesh. Pull that up. So let's flatten that across the top here. Here as well. And so under there, we're not going to try and make it wrap, because if we try to make it wrap neatly, that would give us something we need to support. So we're just going to pull the whole thing back. Do that again. Pull this forward. Pull that up, because that needs to have come around. There we go. So that's the basic shape of that belt. Let's go in here and series mesh that. Divide. Nice. Okay. So we need this to be sitting a bit wider here and a bit tighter up there. Cool. Alright, there we go. So that's our basic sort of belt stripe in one piece. So we need the now the buckle. So the buckle's going to sit on, let's see where we're going to make the buckle sit. Probably on this just here. So let's go grab just after this autosave our cube. We've got a spare, duplicate it, bring it this way, squash it, make it a bit bigger, spin it around, and then we're going to put that kind of where we want this buckle. This way, and then it's wrapped. Okay, cool. So series mesh. Let's move that a little bit. There we go. So when we lean this model back, that's probably going to be okay, but I'm just still going to lower it on this side, just so that it's more supporting itself. And we're also going to drop this a bit wider. So this is quite thin. We're going to struggle to see this. This is going to be a really thin line of silver. So let's make that a bit bigger. And then we want just a little piece that's going to sit sort of on top of it to be the belt. So let's just grab this one. We won't need this anymore. So we're going to shrink that. Make that bigger. Actually, yeah, let's put it there. Make it deeper again in the same way because we just need it to go there. Zero mesh. Doing it twice lowers the poly count significantly. So there we go. That's a very basic sort of belt. So there's no details on this belt or anything like that. We could put in some little sort of studs or something like that later, but for now we're going to leave that as it is, because let's now come in and just make this into a bit of a curve. But careful, because we don't want anything overhanging here. So we're going to go in and just flatten this side. This flatten tool is very strong, the potential. Series mesh. Cool, now the polygons wrap around the outside. So now we kind of want all of these to be one piece. So we've got the belt. That takes like 3 seconds to make. We don't need to worry about keeping that. But this one here, we do. So this isn't going to be the final version. Down the line, we're going to make this into a better version. One that's going to be able to, we're going to be able to wrap it around and put it in different shapes. But for now, this is fine. So we're going to turn this into an insert mesh brush. But before we do that, let's go in, divide it one more time. Turn the resolution all the way up, really high. Just smooth out the details. Now it's all one part, which is just what we want for now. So this chisel React brush I've got down here, we haven't used it yet. We're just going to open it up, come down to this alpha here, holding Alt, click and drag, and we're going to make some holes in the belt. And we want one hole across the top here. There we go. Cool. So there actually feels a bit big, but it is a thick belt, but that's alright. Last thing we're going to do is just spin the camera so that we can get a isolate just this area here and inflate. Cool. Now we've got a little metallic tip or a little metal tip that's going to be interesting to paint later. Let's come in and just make that look a bit better. Cool. Now, this poly count is really high. Let's go in and zero mesh that. This is going to take a few seconds because it's quite dense. Cool. Alright, now that's done, we can see that all the shapes are still there, it's just a much lower poly count. So we want to be able to take this belt and use it somewhere else. We probably could have done this with the ribbon straps as well, actually. So we might come back and do that another time. So we want to take this and be able to, on our next figure, just make the belt and save this whole process. So we're going to go down here to create insert mesh. The current brush is not a S brush. Would you like to append? Yes, we would. New. So if we turn this one off and hide this, say we've got this belt here. Now we want a quick belt strap. Sorry, I've got multiple subdivisions. Let's turn that off. Now we press this button and we click and drag. It's going to insert this for us. Press W to open up the gizmo. Just move it. And there we go. We can now position our little belt buckle wherever we want. That's so much quicker, and we're going to be able to reuse this on different models, and obviously we can scale it as such. So let's get rid of that. We don't, because we already have one here. So we've got this insert mesh brush, save as. Now it's got to have a couple of other brush storage there. I'm going to go to YouTube where I've got my other tools and go belt strap, just so I keep all of the ones making the series together. So there you go, that's our belt strap. So at this point, actually, let's do the buckles that go across here and then we'll call it for today. So we want to make a slightly different sort of buckle that's going to go across the canvasen. but we're going to do it as another insert mesh. So let's come up here to another subtool, insert cube. Let's get rid of the sphere. So let's pretend that this is our gambeson. We just want to model on something flat. So let's bring in another cube, pull it forward, squash it, make it however wide we want, and let's make it a little bit bigger. So we're going to have a more of a conventional sort of belt strap or belt buckle. So it's going to be a bit more like this on one side, duplicate, smaller this way, more like one of these sort of belts. Turn that up. There we go. Okay. All right, cool. And we might do a little bit more detail than that, but this needs to be very basic. This is going to be really small, so we don't want to worry about having like all these extra little bits, but we will still add this one in here. If I rotate that, sorry, wrong one, this one, skinnier across, skinnier, there, remesh that, smooth it out. So this is just our very quick belt buckle for the gambeson, and this one's going to move this way. Now, same thing again, we need the back face mask, pull that back. This at the side, turn on symmetry. We're going to turn on Y symmetry as well, and Z, because we want to move both the back and the front and the top and the sides. So we're just going to pull this all the way out and squash it, make it a bit bigger. Let's turn on Dynamesh quite high. Yep. So this is the basic sort of strap, and we're going to add two little balls here. So that's like just the little rivets that hold this sort of strap together. Alright, let's get rid of this. Delete. Merge visible. So merging visible takes all of these subtools up here. Let's mesh that. I'm not going to worry about Z remeshing this. I think I'm just going to take it across, but I will bring back most of this, and then and then I'm going to squash all of this into one little bit. There we go. So there's our very basic sort of belt strap. Not very detailed because it is going to be really small. So I'm going to find our brush we had earlier, which is belt strap, and I'm going to click here from mesh. Now it's going to give us two insert mesh brushes we can pick from, and if we want to add this brush down to our little brush palette, or when we make our own brush palette, it just saves up a spot and we can add different versions. So we can make different versions of this one with different types of buckles on the bottom, but we won't worry about that because we'll end up making this into a better insert mesh brush with a curve. So let's go back to our gambeson quickly. Now we just want to be able to insert this. So it's going to use the face that you've inserted it on, which can kind of get a bit annoying. So I'm just going to insert it, split mask, turn on W, scale it up to the size I want and place them by hand, just to make this a bit quicker. I need to bring that further back down, as I've just seen, because of the folds in the fabric. There we go. So that's going to be okay for this gambeson. So let's, where's that? That's up there. Let's duplicate this. Rotate it that way. Cool. Duplicate, rotate it this way, and down. Alright, there we go. That's better. Alright, so now, and the last one's going to be under this belt, so we're not going to worry. So let's go here, merge down, and there we go. So now you should probably resave this tool with the Gamston. There's no harm leaving this stuff there as well. Just I'll save you inserting this later. So we're going to leave this video here. We've now done the belt buckles, talked about insert meshes. Insert meshes are great for if you wanted to add little belt details. So I've got one here actually for belt accessories, and we'll make one of these later for bags. And then I press W, I'll put it where I want. But sorry, that should have been on the belt. Also daggers, I've got another sort of ones up here. All sorts of these sorts of things. So you can use it for things like shields and weapons and stuff like that as well, but it's probably better just to import those at a size you already know. But anyway, so here we can leave this figure here. This is now, you can now take this, give it a weapon, pose it, and start printing. All of these objects are now are solid. So if we went to merge visible, got it all up here, and let's just dynamesh it quickly to make it all one piece. Obviously this is, let's make it a bit better resolution so it's nice to look at. So because we've made all of these items here out of very primitive shapes like cube spheres and whatnot, and when we have extracted, we've closed all the holes. When we select any of this, turn on double, we shouldn't have terribly much geometry on the inside. That geometry we have on the inside is from the gaps here, but it's not like in the middle there's any sort of hollow spaces. So if you took this is now clean for 3D printing. It's always good to press close holes though, because sometimes Dynamesh can make some holes. So in the next video we'll probably talk about things like the helmet, facial hair, and then sword and weapons. That way we can start posing the model. We'll do chainmail right at the end, because chainmail is something that's going to be a little bit more optional. But now this is a serviceable 28mm miniature we can now take to 3D printing, and would have taken it's taken me about 3 hours to do these 3 videos. So something you could easily smash out in a weekend. Alright, so I'll be back in a little bit with the next video talking about helmets, facial hair, hair and weapons.